For millennia, the Necron Dynasties ruled the galaxy under the guidance of the Silent King. Names such as Sautek, Orosk and Mefrit were synonymous with military artistry and political grandeur, and the inhabitants of hundreds of worlds bowed before the immense power of the pharaohs of these dynasties. Under the banners of their grand armies, these noble families held vast territories across space, holding their people in an iron grip and crushing all who dared to defy them. The biotransference only strengthened their military rule, subjugating every inhabitant of the dynastic domains to the will of the pharaohs through implanted programs. However, time and the Great Sleep inflicted inevitable damage on the Necron Empire. Much was lost. Once great realms fell into ruin. Houses like Ritak and Horth were forgotten, their crown worlds turned to stardust, and their armies are now no more than a pale reminder of their former military splendor. Yet despite such heavy losses, hundreds of other dynasties still exist, with many yet to emerge from stasis. Those who have awakened now wage wars among the stars, set to enter a new age of Necron dominance. Among them are families like Zarakura and Zathanor, still little known within the galaxy but determinedly intent on making their mark. The most significant of the awakened houses is the Sautek dynasty, ruled with an iron hand by Imhotep, the Stormlord, an unparalleled warrior and ruthless leader, endowed with an analytical mindset and governed by cold logic. The legions of Sautek rose, ready for new battles, and thanks to the strategic prowess of their pharaoh, they mercilessly carved out a new empire from the monolithic body of the galaxy. As the greatest strategist in the history of the galaxy, he conducts conquest campaigns where entire star systems are but individual districts of combat operations, always staying 3 steps ahead of his opponents, driving younger races to slaughter with disdainful ease. Imhotep desires to unite his race and take its rightful place among its rulers. However, Sautek is far from the only ones increasing their power. In the galactic north, the worlds of the Atun dynasty, once a powerful family in Necron society, are coming to life. Their stasis crypts hold terrifying weapons and devices, vast machines of mass destruction the universe has not seen for millions of years. The Ogdebek dynasty, renowned for its cryptex and major achievements in secret sciences, is building an empire consisting of solar cities and worlds of pure energy. Meanwhile, the Mefrit dynasty seeks to reclaim their instruments of war, with which they once killed stars. However, not all of the reborn dynasties have survived the millennia intact. For example, the planets of Charnavok, scattered across the eastern fringe, have been severely damaged in the ongoing wars between the Imperium and the Tyrannids. The embittered survivors formed new legions from the remnants of their existing forces, with which they set out to terrorize imperial colonies. Similarly depleted by the Flayer virus as the Orosk dynasty, many within its ranks succumbed to the disease. Now, as their armies march to war, they are followed by large cohorts of flayed ones, cloaked in the skins of their enemies and exuding the stench of death. The outcast dynasty of Nekthist has earned a reputation of traitors among other dynasties due to instances of betrayal that occurred during the Wars of Secession. Indeed, to the great disgust of their kin, they have managed to find unusual allies among the younger races. Various noble houses exalt unique traits and demonstrate original tactical solutions. Thus, every thought and action of the Lich Guard of the Sautek dynasty is governed by a fragment of the hyperlogical strategic protocols of their master. This means that together they can encircle their enemies like a steel fist. By comparison, members of the Nihilak dynasty are guided by algorithms so advanced that their reaction to any change in battle conditions could be mistaken for foresight. Meanwhile, the soldiers of the Nephrik flaunt exoskeletons made of molten solar gold, dazzling their foes. Even in life, the civilization of the Necrontyr was subject to strict protocols and decrees under the absolute rule of the nobility. This rigid hierarchy only further solidified during the transition from flesh to machine, and the now awakened civilization of the Necrons is far more complex and layered than the one that once ruled the galaxy. Every Necron belongs to some royal dynasty, one of the great houses of the ancient Necrontyr. Loyalty to the dynasty was once purely a matter of family and tradition, but now it is secured through conquests and programming. Every noble is truly individual. Though they may share the same traditions and vassalage, nobles rarely share common interests, except those imposed by the higher lords. Therefore, even if several neighbouring worlds are loyal to the same royal house, their pursued goals are entirely dependent on the wishes and intentions of each ruler or lord, rather than the values of the entire dynasty. It is not uncommon for one dynasty to absorb several others. This happens when one royal house conquers another, or the latter decides to swear fealty for some reason, such as to gain political advantage within its own family, to seize a portion of an empire being built by rivals, or to protect against foreign aggressors. Subordinate dynasties are called dependencies, and they are not always wholly absorbed. Many lords and nobles in large dynasties are simply descendants from smaller families bonded by blood ties. Sometimes one noble family captures just one or a few worlds from another. However, in such cases the family colours and symbols often change. For instance, the Sautek dynasty took from the Atun dynasty a vast station called the Obsidian Moon, and not only rewrote the loyalty protocols of the soldiers slumbering there, but also branded them with their own glyph. Indeed, more often than not, numerous families coexist under the dominion of a ruling dynasty. On the planet Borsis, ruled by the Magadha dynasty, several lesser dynasties existed simultaneously, among which a handful of Nefrek, having sworn loyalty for salvation from the invaders threatening them. The highest of the Necron nobles are the Pharaons, the rulers of entire dynasties encompassing many planetary systems. Beneath these monarchs are the Necron overlords, who rule clusters of tomb worlds within their Pharaon's domain. Lower still are the Necron lords, each charged with the governance of a dynasty's single core or fringe world. So deeply ingrained are these titles in Necron tradition that they remain universally constant across all dynasties. However, the titles of subordinate nobles and functionaries, which constitute advisory councils and specialist convocations, vary to an almost infinite degree. Gravs, Vimarchs and Thanters are but a few of the titles assigned to lower-tier Necron nobles. Almost identical in terms of rank and responsibility, the only real difference lies in the dynasty from which the individual originates. Many Necron titles are hereditary, dating back to the earliest days of the Necron tier. Some were relatively later inventions, crafted as a means by which nobles of lesser rank could be rewarded for their service. As the sphere of Necron tier dominion expanded ever further, the scope and application of titles surpassed any form of central control. Each royal dynasty created ever more elaborate titles based on its own traditions as a means of self-justification. Like many civilizations, the more grandiose or long-winded the title, the more likely it was merely an attempt to mask low status. This tangle becomes particularly Byzantine when a pharaoh from one royal dynasty gains sway over a world from another. The resulting protocol is tedious beyond the endurance of living creatures, but for the Necron nobility, it is merely another means of whiling away eternity. To complicate matters further, if a pharaoh is deposed or destroyed, their successor will sometimes insist that all existing ranks be amended to reflect the traditions of their own house. To undertake such a measure, the incumbent must be entirely sure of their own position, as a challenge to tradition is sure to stir unrest within their own court. The ranking structures within the Necron tier armies and fleets have remained constant, regardless of how vast and disparate the dynasties have become. For instance, whenever Necrons go to war, the title of Nemisor is bestowed upon the overall commander of the battlefield. This allows armies from different star systems to unite with foreign forces without diminishing effectiveness, even if they have never encountered each other before. Such a robust command structure facilitated Imhotep the Stormlord's transition from the position of Nemisor to the throne of Pharaon of the Sautek dynasty. Every Pharaon and overlord is served by a royal court, which assists in the administration of tomb worlds and the execution of military campaigns. A royal court is composed of a cadre of Necron lords, cryptechs, and in the courts of pharaons and overlords, those who owe allegiance to the ruler through oath or familial bonds. Though flesh has long since become a memory for the Necrons, ties of blood remain as significant as before. Each Necron lord is also served by their own lesser courts. Only the nobles of the very lowest ranks do not maintain courts of their own, yet even these mimic their superiors by maintaining a circle of untitled advisors from the most acceptably sentient of their vassals. Though of course these courts are but shadowed mockeries of the real entities. However, in the ongoing battle for status and proper protocol among the Necrons, even a laughable court is considered better than no court at all. The size of a dynasty's royal court is not only a determinant in political status and prestige, it also defines the military position of the noble. The larger the royal court, the greater their seniority and the more troops they command. Even a noble lacking a royal court commands a legion of Necron warriors, a few phalanxes of immortals and deathmarks, as well as a phalanx of Lich Guard. In addition to this, are forces not aligned with any particular dynasty. Triarch Praetorians, the surviving agents of the vanished Triarch ruling council, fight alongside any Nemesor whom they discern to have the best interests of the dynasties at heart. Nihilistic Necron destroyers can be enticed with prospects of causing bloody carnage, while the best for cryptex is to promise patronage. Few Necron nobles, no matter how dire their situation, deliberately seek out the aid of the devolved flayed ones. Although as these charnel creatures inevitably turn up at Necron battles of their own accord, this reluctance is of little consequence. The more senior a noble's position in a dynasty's hierarchy, the greater the number and quality of troops they have authority over. Furthermore, a ranking noble also has indirect command over all the forces controlled by the members of their royal court, who in turn have authority over the forces controlled by their subordinates, and so on. As even the smallest of tomb worlds has at least 20 nobles of lesser rank, an overlord can commonly draw upon at least 100 legions of Necron warriors, should they have a need. The outer shell of the living metal Necron warrior is a true marvel of ancient science. It can possess myriad tones, textures and markings, as a result of which warriors from two different dynasties rarely appear absolutely identical. Some look as though they are made of gleaming stainless steel, and their sturdy bodies are impervious to the ravages of time. Some appear as though they were made from ceramics, stone or even glass, suggesting the use of more mysterious technologies. Regardless of their appearance, the artificial skins of the warriors proudly display the symbols and colours of the dynasties to which they belong. The Necrons are everywhere pursued by echoes of their noble militaristic past, as a result of which they continue to preserve the legacy of their once mighty empire. The Sautek infantry, for example, adhere to the cold silver shade and green glow preferred by their Pharaon Imhotep, since these colour solutions have anciently been considered the prerogative of the greatest Necron-tier leaders. The Thoct dynasty, for instance, chooses icy blue, indicating the vast void rifts near their crown world. The golden-skinned Nephrek signify the boundless solar resources available to them, while the soldiers of the Hyrek dynasty use the colour of crystals from asteroids of their native system. And although the death of stars and the destruction of worlds have changed the face of the Necron Empire, these fragments of the past have not disappeared. All Necrons, noble and common-born alike, are bound together by the symbol of the ancient Necron-tier empire, the Ankh of the Triarch. Each of the royal dynasties also has its own glyph, the designs of which have remained unchanged for centuries. Necron nobles bear the dynasty's mark, normally upon a death mask, cloak or sometimes as a stylized detail on personal weaponry or tokens of office. The most arrogant of nobles bear a glyph upon their breastplate in place of the Ankh of the Triarch, though to do so is to defy tradition and protocol. Regents and other high-ranking representatives of nobility often demonstrate their status with the aid of a golden ankh. Only nobles of the highest rank are permitted to bear their dynasty's glyph in its fullest form. Those of lesser rank bear only elements of the glyph, symbolizing their position relative to a royal dynasty's heart of power. A handful of nobles do not bear a glyph at all. Some hail from royal dynasties destroyed during the War in Heaven, while others were stripped of rank and status for some long-ago transgression. Such nobles are considered at best untrustworthy, as their past or future bears the mark of betrayal. Dynastic glyphs are unique to Necron nobles. The common soldiery, such as Necron warriors and immortals, are largely perceived by their noble masters as interchangeable chattel. As such, they are deemed unworthy of direct association with the proud lineage of any specific dynasty, although the colours of their death masks and armour sometimes reflect ancient Necrontyr heraldry, thus indirectly indicating their allegiance. In contrast, Necron war engines, including monoliths and doomsday arcs, are often adorned with dynastic glyphs. They are considered personal armaments of a particular noble, hence warranting a higher status than even the Necron warriors that crew them. An ankh on the chest of a common warrior ties him to the Triarch, showcasing his membership in the Necron Empire. However, it also serves as a personal emblem. The colour of the ankh indicates which lord or overlord the soldiers of a given legion belong to. The more prominent it is, the more significant is the noble's status. A gold or turquoise ankh signifies great honour bestowed upon the personal legions of a Tombworld's ruler. A dark green symbol, as a rule, is typically associated with the planet Gidrim. The phalanx symbols displayed on warriors are traditional designations for combat units within a legion. Each represents an element of a dynastic symbol, which results in legions from different Tombworlds having identical phalanx markings. Privileged legions' glyphs are sometimes painted in various colours, denoting the might of their rulers or commemorating particularly notable victories. Immortals employ the same glyph elements as warriors. Besides, many sport a stripe running from the bridge of the nose to the top of the skull as a mark of distinction. Immortals proudly display the Ankh of the Triarch, still recognisable as a symbol of their ancient empire. Like their junior counterparts, immortal symbols are coloured according to their lords and overlords. Phalanxes enjoying special favour may flaunt the colours of their pharaon, indicating that they either belong to his personal legion or operate under the command of one of his close overlords. As the elite, some immortal phalanxes are entitled to repaint their insignia in dynastic colours as a reward for their achievements or to honour their master. On the undercarriage of the tomb blade, dynastic insignia are often visible. A pilot demonstrates allegiance to a particular lord through the colour of the ankh on his chest. Moreover, the living metal of the tomb blade typically bears other signs and glyphs, indicating its assigned role within the aerial squadron. On the flat panels of a monolith's hull, one can frequently observe the owner's dynastic glyph alongside his personal symbols and other hieroglyphs. Military machines from a tomb world are usually inscribed with various glyphs in the Necron language. These can be both marks of combat distinction and symbols simply indicating ownership or glorifying the owner's power. The Overlord grants Lich Guards the right to display their status among his bodyguards. For instance, a golden death mask distinguishes the cohort's leader, while a golden plate with an ankh signifies that the warrior belongs to the personal guard of a regent or another high-ranked aristocrat. Dressed in royal garments, the guards emulate the splendour of their lords. Lich Guards often wear the colours and symbols of their master, leaving no doubt about their elevated position. Among other Necrons, death marks are distinctly marked by a single glowing eye situated in the centre of the head. Sometimes the colours of their facial plates refer to the guilds of Necron assassins. Such markings identify death marks as warriors who, by the will of their pharaon, act outside the traditional codes of war. Death marks can use the dynastic colours of their employer, although some groups are known throughout the Necron Empire for their distinctive colours and marks. Units of death marks typically employ the same glyphs as other infantry forces, but sometimes they intentionally hide their identifying marks to conceal their presence on the battlefield. It is not unusual for death marks to fight alongside the legions of some other tomb world or dynasty. While many nobles refrain from using assassins, they might hand them over to an ally if it serves to fulfill their own schemes. Since members of a combat vehicle crew are considered to hold a position above that of ordinary warriors, they might wear golden death masks to demonstrate their status. Combat vehicles such as annihilation barges are often decorated with Necron hieroglyphs that indicate who owns the equipment and glorify its owner. Triarch Praetorians usually adhere to the colours of the tomb world they oversee. While some battalions wear familial colours associated with the rule of the Triarch, Praetorians often resort to using the glyphs of the phalanx of the dynasty they fight alongside. A Triarch Stalker pilot uses the same glyphs as the rest of the Praetorians in his battalion. Destroyers generally wear the dynastic colours of their native tomb world and its ruler, although some of their cults and lords have gained such power that their own colour schemes and markings have become as recognisable as any awakened dynasty. The obsession of the flayed ones, who stretch the flayed skin of their victims over their skeletons, forever drives them in search of fresh flesh. And though these outcasts do not adhere to the markings of phalanxes or legions, many still bear the colours of their native dynasty hidden beneath their gruesome adornments. Canoptic spiders do not bear an ankh, which would tie them to any specific lord. Instead, their skin of living metal is merely painted in the colours of their dynasty. Even the tiny Canoptek scarabs exhibit different colorations depending on the Canoptek swarm they belong to. Constructs that are part of a Canoptek swarm might be marked with hieroglyphs that bind them together. Before the coming of the Khitan, there existed many hundreds of Necrontyr dynasties. Some possessed vast political and military power, while others were weakened and on the verge of extinction. During the War of Secession, the rebellion against biotransference, the War in Heaven, and the Great Sleep, many thousands of royal dynasties were destroyed. It is hard to say how many survived, except to state that they number in the hundreds or possibly thousands. Those dynasties mentioned here can be considered among the most powerful of the remaining ones. The greatest of the awakened empires belongs to the Sautek dynasty, led by Imhotep the Stormlord, a peerless warrior and merciless commander. When he awoke and found the Sautek divided due to disputes, he took power into his own hands and declared himself Pharaon. Thanks to his tactical genius and aggressive strategies, the legions of the Sautek crafted themselves a new realm. The dynasty reclaimed dozens of star systems and brought many fractured Necron territories under control. The crown world of the Sautek dynasty, where the throne of the Pharaon is located, is situated on the eastern fringe and is named Mandragora. Imhotep has always desired to unite all Necron tomb worlds under his rule, and currently nothing can impede his plans, not even the furious invasion of demons. When the Great Rift opened, the Stormlord directed the Sautek dynasty on a path of galactic conquest. Imhotep began a massive military campaign aimed at capturing dozens of tomb worlds that had awoken due to the war. Imhotep strives to conquer them before they can fully activate after a stasis sleep, as this will ensure the further ascension of the Sautek dynasty. The Necrons of the Agdagath dynasty have always taken pleasure in the worship of primitive races. Dozens of worlds are under the dominion of this dynasty, many of them populated by humans to whom Agdagath generously grants the status of citizens and not slaves. But this is merely a deceptive appearance, for there is no equality between the Necrons and humans. The latter live only as long as they sufficiently bow to their masters. Yet the Agdagath dynasty, like all Necrons, are jealous deities. Nowhere are annihilation barges found as frequently as on the northern outskirts of the worlds of the Akhanazad dynasty. These tomb worlds are under constant threat from the Orcs of Charadon, to whom the technology-rich and highly organized planets of the Necrons present an irresistible temptation, both as plunder and as an opportunity to sow discord. Without the deployment of annihilation barges, many of these worlds would have long fallen. Few weapons are capable of so effectively decimating the ranks of the advancing Orc horde. A single shot shatters the armor of the truck, while an uncontrolled lightning arc incinerates any Orcs unlucky enough to be nearby. The lords of the Arin-Marok dynasty operate on unknown protocols, making their actions virtually impossible to predict. It is this particular trait that compelled Imhotep to forge an agreement with the Arin-Marok dynasty in the year 798 of the 41st millennium, instead of securing their loyalty through direct conquest. The Atun dynasty reigns over many tomb worlds at the northern galactic edge, the homeland of the Necrontyr. Many ancient wonders are under the control of the Pharaon and his mighty lords. and an even greater number awaits the hour of its discovery on the still-dormant tomb worlds. A cryptek named Setek, of the dynasty of the Hyksos, captured Ahriman to study the Necron's technology for affecting the flow of time. Each time, the Necron scientist escaped his bounds and rushed towards the spherical chronometron lying next to him. A beam of dark matter emitted by a combat servitor destroyed him. Then, the chronomancer rewound time and tried again, gradually making progress. However, he never managed to escape. As on any successful attempt, Ahriman himself would turn events back, now using warp sorcery. The goal of the Cardenath dynasty is quite clear. They are fated to return the worlds of the galaxy under the rule of the Necrons. Such a stance often leads to conflict with other dynasties, especially those who seek to preserve certain races in hopes of conducting reverse biotransference. But Cardenath simply ignores their rivals, considering them weaklings, and continues their campaigns of eradication. Members of the Catatrix dynasty awakened soon after the opening of the Great Rift, when the Diadem of Transference, a relic lost even before the Great Sleep, briefly sent a signal, then fell silent again. Upon awakening, Lord Merlik ordered a search, and the dynasty's agents managed to locate the artifact on the Imperial Hive world of Targian, into which the Necron armies immediately invaded. Failing to find the diadem, the Catatrix dynasty destroyed the planet, and now pursues several human survivors, believing the relic to be in their possession. The Maynarch dynasty mad and paranoid adherents of total extermination. Other Necron dynasties do not trust them, and are unlikely to cooperate with them. However, in times of acute necessity, the Maynarch dynasty can manipulate lesser races to serve their purposes and is readily prepared to use their nightmarish technologies for their enslavement, provided that its rulers can restrain their bloodthirsty tendencies for the time being. The fact is that the minds of the once proud and mighty rulers of the Maynarch dynasty harbour madness, a malady that slowly erodes their bodies and sanity, and one by one they fall victim to the Flayer virus. Some of the dynasty's lords are seized by murderous fury and are unable to distinguish foe from ally, while some are still able to control themselves through sheer force of will alone. In the most hopeless cases, the auto-repair systems distort a noble's body so that it better expresses the malice that has consumed him. Thus begins the nightmarish and relentless transformation into the Flayed Ones. Representatives of the Mefrit dynasty, whose culture extols extermination, are especially renowned for systematically erasing life in entire systems, planet by planet, leaving nothing but wastelands littered with corpses behind. The Mefrit dynasty has always possessed formidable power and played a significant role in the empire of the Necrons during the War in Heaven. However, by fate's decree over the millennia, it was scattered among the stars, and under the weight of the epochs of the Great Sleep, the greatness of this noble house was shattered to pieces. The weapons capable of destroying worlds were lost in space or became inoperative, and many of the central worlds simply ceased to exist. Nonetheless, the remaining tomb worlds awoke, hungry for the glory and grandeur they once enjoyed, and now wished to piece their empire back together. Additionally, the Mefrit dynasty lacks a pharaoh to rule over them, as their crown world fell during the incursion of the Hrud during the Great Sleep. And now many of the dynasty's lords fight for power, hoping to occupy the throne of the departed king. As masters of Star Destroyer technologies, the Mefrit dynasty not so long ago turned its destructive weaponry against their sworn enemies, the Eldar and Scorched Life from several Exodite planets, after which they claimed rights over their burned remains. The craft worlds of Aletok and Saimhan have currently united efforts to halt the relentless onslaught of the Mefrit. During the Wars of Secession, the nobles from the Nechthys dynasty acquired a reputation as turncoats and betrayers, for many of them adhered to pacts and alliances only as long as it served their interests. Though these events occurred long ago, the taint of dishonour still weighs heavily over the Nechthys dynasty, and few pharaohs of other noble lineages will deign even to communicate with them, much less trust them. Untraditionally for a major dynasty, the lords of the Nechthys dynasty engage in mercenary activities, often offering their military services in exchange for other, less tangible goods of various dynasties. They rarely face a shortage of offers, as mercenary service is the only type of agreement that even the Necthist dynasty does not violate. A significant portion of the Necthist dynasty now inhabits the tomb palaces of Drazak, for their minds and bodies have been altered by the Flare virus. Although Drazak is nominally counted among the dynasty's principal domains, in reality it has been left to its own devices to prevent the contagion from spreading to uninfected worlds. What is most alarming is that, while most bastions of the Flayed Ones inevitably vanish as the madness of their inhabitants gradually takes over, the forces of Drazak, on the contrary, are growing. The Nephrek dynasty, one of the many that coexist with others on the planet Borsis, under the dominion of the Magadha dynasty. This noble family, from which Lord Cryptek Jazarin hailed, ruled one of the districts of the necropolis, where the astral knights of various chapters met their end. Their barge collided with the surface of the world engine. The rulers of the Nephrek dynasty strive not for the reverse biotransference to return to fragile bodies of flesh and blood, but for transformation into beings of pure light. Recent attempts to pierce the darkness of the Cicatrix Maledictum and expand the range of their translocation beams with the aid of massive celestial construct have been unsuccessful, as they were thwarted by Magnus the Red of the Thousand Suns, who wish to seize these technological wonders for themselves. Woe unto those who dare intrude upon the domains of the noble Nihilak dynasty. They have always zealously guarded the borders of their ancient domains. However, since the discovery of the Great Rift, they have increasingly been sending legions beyond their native lands to actively hunt the forces of chaos. The Nihilak dynasty has encircled a major sector of space within their territory, and currently billions of their servants tirelessly labor to erect massive monuments arranged in strict geometric order. The warlike Novok dynasty well remembers the bloody rites they performed during the Wars of Secession, when their soldiers smeared the blood of slain enemies on their hands and faces. Now, the lords of this dynasty fully quench their thirst for battle and conquest amid the madness reigning in the Imperium Nihilus, seizing worlds from both the Imperium of Man and the forces of chaos in a series of blood-soaked campaigns. The tomb worlds of the Ogdebek dynasty were well prepared for the Great Sleep, outfitted more completely with backup systems and multiple redundancies. Such measures proved to be quite apt, as their dominions are located in the Segmentum Solar, quite close to the centre of power of the Imperium. Consequently, the Ogdebek dynasty leads unceasing wars with the armies of humanity. The representatives of the Oruskar dynasty have always been sworn enemies of the Sotek dynasty. While the territories of the latter expanded among the stars, the possessions of the Oruskar dynasty were confined to a handful of sacred ancestral worlds laden with technological marvels. The ancient rivalry is not yet over. It was merely suspended for the duration of the sleep. Both dynasties are currently pursuing a common goal of conquering the galaxy, but such a state of affairs is unlikely to last forever. With the opening of the Great Rift, the warlords of the Forge world Metallica united their efforts for the systematic extermination of the Necrons that had risen from the depths of their dominions. The Orusk dynasty initially responded sluggishly, but as more of its central worlds awakened, the tech priests of Metallica and their knight allies began to struggle for their very survival. The Toct dynasty firmly entrenched itself in the uninhabited wastelands of the Segmentum Pacificus, not by chance. By extracting energy from the void rifts surrounding their central worlds, they not only secured an almost inexhaustible source of energy, but also acquired a powerful aura of deadly radiation, causing living beings nearby to rapidly weaken, sicken, and ultimately die. The Sekemtar dynasty had significantly weakened since ancient times, resulting in its subjugation by the forces of the Sautek dynasty. Overlord Nazar, formerly the Pharaon of the Crown world Sarlok, refuses to submit to the authority of Imhotep but dares not challenge the new ruler directly. However, Nazar has not given up hope of regaining his independence and even now continues to weave a net of intrigue aimed at ending Imhotep's rule forever. On a planet long considered one of their so-called maiden worlds by the Eldari, dozens of tombs were discovered hidden in the jungle undergrowth among the tangled roots of ancient trees. When the Sekemtar dynasty awakened, and claimed rights to their ancient possessions. In a short time, the local Eldari rallied into a single army to fight against the Necrons, hoping to defeat the ancient enemy before it fully awoke. Their assault shattered against the risen tombs. The few Necron warriors that had managed to rise from their graves were continuously revived thanks to resurrection process amplifiers installed in the fortresses, whereas every fallen Eldar warrior was irreplaceable. The ancient armies of the Necron Dynasty emerged onto the world's surface from the Eternity Gates opened in the fortresses, killing everyone who dared dispute their lord's rights to this planet, and within a few months the Eldar were driven from the planet. Pharaon of the Necron Dynasty, whose realms lie in Jericho Reach, was driven mad over the millions of years of sleep, and now his place has been taken by Regent Amontek. He tries to unravel the great schemes of the Lord and awaken the countless legions that sleep in the crown world, hidden in the hollow sun. Upon awakening, the nobles find that both estates have been destroyed due to the Eye of Terror, and the surviving territories are being ravaged by Tyranids. For this reason, they had no choice but to join the Necron Dynasty and add their ancestral wealth to their riches, even though they had been openly hostile in the distant past. Thus, the Lord Regent contacted Nemesor Amarkun of the Necron Dynasty and pledged his dynasty's loyalty in exchange for assistance in rebuilding the Central Worlds and their protection against the swarms of the Great Devourer. In gratitude for his rescue, he ordered the commencement of ship construction at his available anchorages to replenish the fleets of his new lords. Despite this, he remained incapable of defending the familial systems from the unceasing invasion of the Tyranids. Thus, he repeatedly sought assistance from Amarkun. Much of the territory once ruled by the Charnavok dynasty is located far to the galactic southeast. Many of its dormant tomb worlds were devoured by the Tyranids' hive fleet behemoth, and countless others have been ravaged during the Imperium of Man's counterattacks against the Great Devourer. As a result, the remaining star systems of the Charnavok dynasty are numerous yet small and scattered. Only the strongest have survived. Hence the forces of the Charnavok dynasty are fragmented but extremely dangerous. The Charnavok dynasty exerts considerable efforts in maintaining the ancient dolmen gates which connect their realms across the galaxy. Should an invasion by the Tyranids occur again, the Charnavok dynasty will require such evacuation pathways if their dynasty intends to survive.